Hello everybody and welcome to our ResNexus webinar. Today I'm really excited that we're being joined by Lauren and Ben from RoomPriceGenie. So that's a revenue management software and they are going to tell us all about it because it's definitely not my area of expertise. So I'm looking forward to learning all about it. So I will hand over to Lauren and Ben now, and please don't forget that if you have any questions, put them into the chat and we'll make sure that they get answered at the very end. Thanks guys.
Hiya. My name's Lauren. It's really nice to meet you. I'll just be going through a couple of slides about RoomPriceGenie and then handing over to Ben, who will show you a quick demo of the system. So I'll just share this now. Okay, so RoomPriceGenie is a revenue management system that has an integration with ResNexus. If we look at here, so this is the wider RoomPriceGenie team on the right-hand side there. And on the left-hand side, you'll see the UK team. So it's obviously myself on the right. I'm a senior sales and revenue manager for RoomPriceGenie. I've been with them for 2.5 years. Previous to that, my background is in revenue management, and previous to that, operationally in hospitality sites as well. We've also got Nick on the left-hand side, who's not with us today, but he's started RoomPriceGenie this year as a sales and revenue manager with a lot of experience in revenue management as well. And then I'll let Ben introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Ben. Been with RoomPriceGenie about 18 months, but worked in the industry around 20 years, 10 years as a revenue manager. Just worked with a wide variety of hotels, apartment groups, campsites, caravan parks, glamping parks, and so forth. So huge amount of experience in the industry.
Yeah, and our jobs at RoomPriceGenie are to show you the system. So if you're interested in looking at the system, either Ben, Nick, or I would book a call. We would go through what RoomPriceGenie looks like and also take you through a free trial period. So we obviously are all qualified revenue managers, and our job is to for you to get the most out of using a revenue management system, really. The integration and how that works with ResNexus is really straightforward, and it's a two-way integration where once we're plugged in, we can pull things like your occupancy and current rates from the PMS. We then go then that gets sent into RoomPriceGenie, which uses a couple of different factors to calculate where the best price should be. And Ben will obviously touch on this in more detail when he does the demo, but the calculation takes place, and then we are then able to send those rates back to your PMS. So what that would look like in a free trial period is it would be initially a one-way connection where we're pulling the data from the PMS and showing you the calculations. And then once you're happy with how those calculations are sitting, we would turn that to a two-way integration that then sends those prices back to the PMS. As I mentioned, so we always offer everybody a free trial period, and it can be quite an abstract idea of what revenue management can look like for you if it's something you've not done before. And so definitely if you're using an RMS for the first time, it's great to be able to do that within a kind of free, no obligation trial period. We work on all the setup with you. And then we look at the next stage, as I mentioned, which is the pricing automation. And then we fine tune that account with you. And then going forward, we also have several layers of support once you're with RoomPriceGenie as a client. So everybody that works in our aftercare team in the revenue management team is also a qualified revenue manager. So you get lots of support both within onboarding and post onboarding as well. It doesn't take very long to get up and running, and really what we're looking to do in that trial period, we only need to have a couple of touch points, which is initially setting the integration, then doing the first setup call meeting. So that's the kickoff stage here, where we introduce you to how the system works and get the main account settings in place. We would then look to do a review of how things are going about a week after that, answer any questions that you've got, and by that point then you should be able to go into that autopilot. Where the rates are being automatically sent through to the PMS for you. With revenue management systems, it's always really important as well for you to take a look yourself to see what other people are saying about how they work and what kind of clients they work well for. So we would always recommend looking at things like the Hotel Tech Report, where you can see what other people are saying about the system and the features, etc. So it's always good to have a look before looking at systems as well. And lastly, I know often one of our questions will be kind of how much can RoomPriceGenie increase your revenue by? And we have recently done a case study across a really wide portfolio of all different types of properties, so 567 properties in total. But that can be anywhere from properties with a few bedrooms right up to much larger properties, not all just hotels, a really big range of properties. And on average, we found that over the first year, those properties increased revenue by 19%, and that was a mixture of an uplift in ADR of 4% and an increase of 14% in occupancy. And when we looked across all those properties, they were all different markets, but what the clear kind of indicator was that the hotel size didn't matter. We could still see the same percentage of uplift in revenue regardless of the size of property. Again, all the details of that case study are on our website, so you can kind of see a bit more detail if you wanted to on the RoomPriceGenie website. And I will hand over to Ben now, who will show you the system in a bit more detail.
Okay, thank you. I will just share my screen. Okay, hopefully you can see that. So this is the RoomPriceGenie setup screen. As Lauren mentioned, we always offer a free trial, and every property is slightly different, so it's a bespoke setup for every property. The integration gets made, which is a relatively quick process to do. That will allow us to pull through the number of rooms. In this example, it's a hotel, but it could be if you've got glamping pods, or it could be tents, or whatever style of offering you have. Obviously, the different types here. We've got the 5 different room types in this hotel, the number of rooms in each category. The starting point for our calculation is a base price, which I guess is equivalent to the sort of average daily rate that you might expect for each room type. You might have these figures to hand, but if you haven't, what we can do is we can look at your forward pricing, and we can get a bit of a feel for where you sit in the market and what your average is that you're currently charging over a 12-month period. You decide the minimum price and the maximum price per night. That can be broken down to a daily, weekly, monthly level. But on this screen here, this is the very top level. So this particular room, the average starting point is 151. It would never go lower than 100, and it would never go higher than 200. We would also take some occupancy expectations from you. Obviously, you of course want to sell as much as you can, but in order to get the best balance of rate and occupancy, it's always good to get some realistic expectations broken down by month here. Again, if you don't have that sort of data, we can look at your current occupancies, and we can pretty much gauge where you're tracking to go. Each property has a different booking window. Obviously, something like a city hotel might have a very short booking window, whereas a resort type destination might take a lot of bookings very early on in the cycle. So again, we want to tailor it and get RoomPriceGenie set up for your property. You can decide how aggressive the system is in terms of the price changes. Some people are very happy for big price increases and decreases depending on demand. Some people are a bit more cautious, and they'd rather have smaller changes. Again, you can set it to your preference, and all these bits are not set in stone once they're done. We can tweak them and play with them and fine tune them throughout the trial process to get RoomPriceGenie behaving in the manner that you would hope it would behave. For each property, we pull through a seasonal curve. We do that using data from booking.com, and we can use Airbnb as well. Gives us a bit of a seasonal curve for that particular area, your town or city. Again, though, if your property is a bit unique and tends to perform differently to the local market, we can put additional adjustments, whether it's an increase or a decrease, and just get it set up for your property. And the same applies for the day of the week. Obviously, some properties might have a much higher demand on the weekend. Some might be a much flatter sort of trend across the days of the week. Again, we can get that set up for your liking. We do all the setup, but we then have that call that Lauren mentioned to go through the setup with you and to make any adjustments based on your feedback. We then hand over the keys to start the free trial. Probably the most common place you would go is the calendar screen. On this particular demo account, you can see that we're on August here, and this property is currently 29% full. The target is 75%, and based on the booking window for this property, we'd expect it to be 36% booked up at this point in time. So a little bit behind. but you can see on each day there's the individual occupancy per day, and some days it's higher than others. The small number at the top is the current price that you have in the PMS, and the number at the bottom in the red or green is where RoomPriceGenie wants to go. So it could be an increase, it could be a decrease, or sometimes there's not really any change. Where that price comes from is a combination of a few different things. So we take the base price that we set at the start there as a starting point. We make an adjustment for the local market demand. So again, the way we're doing that is we're pulling through pricing data from booking.com, from Airbnb for your local area. RoomPriceGenie isn't a rate shopping tool, so we're not going to directly link to another property and copy their price. But what we're interested in is the market shifts. Is the market generally moving up on that day? Is the demand good? Or is the market shifting down in price? And we have to factor that in. So on this one here, you see there's a slight downwards adjustment. There's a further adjustment, of course, for your own property, how many rooms or apartments or whatever it may be are left, how much time there is before the arrival date. And that figure is going to be ever changing as days go by and as bookings come in, as cancellations come in and so forth. A further adjustment for if we've told the system to do anything on a certain day of the week or month of the year outside of the normal trend. Obviously on this one, there isn't anything. And also events as well. So if there is anything on in the local area, we can decide the radius that we feel is relevant, but typically it might be 15, 20 miles. If there's any events on, such as it could be sport, it could be music, it could be business, it could be school holidays, it could be Christmas markets, anything of a reasonable size that is potentially going to bring people into your area and have them stay overnight in an accommodation, that will automatically pull through on the dashboard there for you. So you don't need to enter this yourself. We're populating that for you. This is obviously a big event. The proms, it's obviously a London property, but smaller events will generally pull through as well, as long as there is predicted to be an accommodation spend on that particular date. So all those things I've just mentioned pull together into the calculation. So the base price, the external demand, the internal demand, further adjustments, they create the RoomPriceGenie recommended price, which in that example there is 129. We are designed primarily to be automated. So as Lauren mentioned, initially it's set up as a one-way connection and nothing is live as such. But once you've had a chance to review and you decide to turn on the system and go live, essentially. So by doing that, that means it's going to be updating into the PMS multiple times a day. We do different levels of subscription, but the standard would be a minimum of 5 times a day, and just constantly readjusting, recalculating your price and pushing through the new price multiple times a day. And that would be for every room type for the next 12 or even 18 months ahead. You still retain full control. So if for some reason you did want to jump in and on a certain day you decide you might want to lock a price in and fix it, or you might want to make an adjustment to the minimum or maximum on that day, or adjustment to the RoomPriceGenie recommendation, you can still absolutely do that. You still retain full control. But I'd always say if you find yourself jumping in and doing too many manual adjustments, there's probably something in the strategy that we can help you with. So some properties, for instance, might reduce quite significantly on the last day before arrival to sell the final few rooms. If that's your strategy, we can replicate that in here, and we can tell the system to reduce maybe another further 15% on the last day or 10% on the last 2 or 3 days. So there's normally a solution that we can find without you having to replace one manual job with another. I guess that's the overview of the system. Without sort of going into every feature, we have a surge protection feature. So if you do have a property that potentially gets booking surges, maybe have events in your area, you can set the trigger. Maybe if you take 5 bookings all come in for the same day within a 24-hour period, maybe say 21 days or more in the future, RoomPriceGenie will be reacting anyway. You don't need to worry about that, but we can also set it up so there's alerts. We can send emails every time that happens. And there's potentially further adjustments we can do in terms of moving to a fixed price if that scenario ever happens, or increasing for a period of days and locking the price in whilst you have a chance to review. You can be as hands-on or as hands-off as you want with RoomPriceGenie. We work with a lot of customers who rarely log in. They're happy for the system to just do its thing, and that's absolutely fine. If you'd rather still be a bit more hands-on, you can still be going in, you can be just tweaking adjustments, and maybe stretching your occupancy goal or adding an adjustment on a certain day of the week or a certain month, that's absolutely fine as well. And either way, you'll get good results from using RoomPriceGenie. I'd say that's the overview of the system, really. As Lauren mentioned, we offer the free trial. We work with you throughout that trial period to get it set up and fine-tuned for your property. You don't have to do any of the work in terms of the setup. We do all that for you, but then we do have that initial conversation to go through the setup and take on board any feedback that you have. I would say that is it, unless there's any questions.
And thanks, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Lauren and Ben. So I have got a few questions. I've got one from Karen here who says, is RoomPriceGenie suitable for holiday cottage? We have 2 holiday cottages.
Yeah, so we do work with holiday cottages as well. It always very much depends on how your PMS etc. is set up. But yes, we work with lots of properties like that, so it's still worth exploring, and we can look into that for each property as well. It's really common for kind of any different level of property. So two units isn't too small really for us to work with.
Great, thank you. Hopefully that answers your question, Karen. I've got a couple of other questions. So how does it work? So like we're a glamping property, so we've got 6 geodesic domes and we've got a holiday cottage. And when you're kind of getting all the information about the local area and what people are putting their prices at, how does it kind of work out that some of these properties are so unique? Like we've got a geodome with a slide inside it, and how do you kind of compare those properties to, say, a holiday cottage locally or a hotel locally, because that's what I can't fathom in my head from the glamping world, I guess.
Yeah, we get that question a lot, but the main thing to point out with RoomPriceGenie is we're not directly copying anyone's pricing. So you don't need an identical style of property nearby in order for us to work. What we're looking at is the market trend. So the chances are if your property is in a certain area, that area is going to be experiencing the same level of demand. So what we're doing is essentially tapping into the pricing data of other properties without relying on them to copy them, essentially. So unless your property booked completely different to the whole local area, the system would work perfectly well, even if you didn't have a similar property nearby. We do work with some properties that are in quite remote locations as well, and still works absolutely fine. It's we've got properties on the Isles off the coast of Scotland, and there's not a huge amount in the area, but we're using the best quality data we can find. So it doesn't need to be a similar product.
Yeah, we use a mixture of data from both Booking.com and Airbnb. So often the Airbnb data for smaller properties will be more like for like in terms of booking trends. And really, when we're looking at that market factor, it's giving us the initial seasonality to tell you where should you naturally be starting higher, where should you naturally be starting lower. But that is ultimately immediately adjusted by your internal trends. So if the market is inflated, but you're pacing behind, it won't just hold your prices out, because it will always be looking at a combination of both.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, I've got a great example. I think I told you guys when we chatted before that we have this flat rate that is all year round because we don't put the price up in the school holidays, and it's part of our kind of ethics and our selling point of the site. But we're near Glastonbury, so Glastonbury Festival was on, and I had this ton of bookings Tuesday one night. Tuesdays, but the whole site was booked for a Tuesday night. I was like, what the heck's going on? And it's because everyone was coming to the area to stay somewhere locally before Glastonbury. And I was like, oh, if I'd have thought about this, and RoomPriceGenie presumably would have kind of picked up on this, that everything was getting booked up, I could have probably doubled, tripled my prices. But I just didn't have a clue. I didn't even think about it. Didn't even enter my thought train.
That's a perfect example of where RoomPriceGenie is really effective, because once it senses that there's a shift in the local market, it would be increasing your own price before you've even had to sell any of your units. So it's not like you need to sell 2 or 3 before the system reacts. It would have recognized that shift. You would have potentially logged in and you'd have seen the spike, and you'd have seen on the dashboard there that the event is on, because Glastonbury absolutely would pull through onto the dashboard. And then, yeah, if you were live with RoomPriceGenie, it would have reacted a lot earlier. We had it with the Oasis concerts, was a big example from recently, and yeah, it's a great way of suddenly avoiding selling everything too cheap and then coming in on Monday morning and realizing you're full for a year away. Yeah.
And I think with dynamic pricing, it works in both ways. So it can work in the favor of the person booking as well, because there'll be certain times of year where actually pricing may go down a little bit to help you increase occupancy. Ultimately, all the settings in RoomPriceGenie enable you to stay in control of that. So the aggressiveness setting that Ben mentions is a really good example of, we can control our prices by how much they're moving up by. So you can still look for uplifts in your revenue over things like Glastonbury without going to a level that you're uncomfortable with. You can very much keep the strategy within what you want it to be. So those smaller increases rather than kind of rocketing everything too high.
Yeah, and you control the maximum price as well. So if you maybe were comfortable selling at, let's say, £50 a night and maybe going up to 70 or 80, but you didn't want to skyrocket up to 150, you control that maximum. So the system's only ever going to work within the parameters that you decide.
Yeah, we've got another question. So she says, sorry, I missed the beginning of the presentation. Is there an automated interface with ResNexus so we don't need to manually input prices? And the answer to that is yes. Yeah, so we've got an API connection, I believe it is, that will connect RoomPriceGenie with ResNexus, which means that it should pull everything over. I believe that's correct.
And then once that connection's made, we just needed normally a couple of days at our end to pull through the data and to do the setup. And we can see all your existing pricing, we can see all your current occupancies, and then, as I say, we do the setup and then reach out to yourself for a setup call to go through it with you. Yeah.
And then presumably, I'm guessing this is a ResNexus question. Once it's in ResNexus as the price, that then pulls through to Airbnb and Booking.com and any of your OTAs that you've got connected.
Yeah.
So then you don't have to update anything on that end either. It's all just automated.
Yeah, we're not directly integrating with any of the OTAs or any of the channels. We're just integrating with ResNexus, and then it's exactly the same as it would currently work if you manually changed the price in ResNexus. Yeah.
And the other question was the revenue uplift 4% or 19%?
So the revenue uplift was 19%, and that was a combination of occupancy and ADR. So I think the ADR uplift was 4% and the occupancy was 14%, which gave us an overall 19% revenue uplift.
Yeah, and the amount of opportunity is going to depend largely on, to be honest, how well you've been doing your pricing. If you have just been charging a flat rate and never making adjustments, Vicky, it would potentially be quite a bit more opportunity than the 19%. If you have been on top of things and making good quality adjustments, it might be a bit lower than the 19%. But don't forget, you're still saving a huge amount of time, because changing prices is something I used to do day in, day out, year in, year out, and it's not a lot of fun. So it automates the process and just gives you peace of mind, I guess, that you're not going to miss anything as well.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, who doesn't do any, like, not even weekdays versus weekends, it's every single night it's the same price.
A huge amount.
You're going to tell me I'm crazy, right? Do you have many properties that do the same as we do?
Yeah,
that you're trying to persuade.
It's still there. Sorry, Lauren. I'd say bigger chain hotels and things have been using systems for years now, but in the kind of small to medium type properties, it's still quite common to be doing things manually or even be charging a flat rate, which is why it's a hugely booming market at the minute. And RoomPriceGenie alone has doubled in size, I think 3 years in a row now, in terms of the number of properties we work with. I don't know if you're going to add anything to that, Lauren.
No, it's just they're very similar. So yeah, it's still very common in the kind of smaller space to have flat rates when we first speak to people. And again, RoomPriceGenie is a really good system to be using as a first-time revenue management system, because it is really easy to use. It's really user-friendly. It's not something that you have to get like an account manager to make lots of changes. You are hands-on with the system itself, and our job really is to teach you that system at the beginning so that then you can manage and make changes any way that you want.
And one of my other questions, is I find like people like to see prices on a website. So when you go on someone's website, they like to see, okay, this room is £120 a night, this is £150 a night. how do you work it on a website? Do you say prices from, or do you have to kind of, because you would just pick that base amount, that the lowest you'll go, presumably, and then put prices from this to this, or how do people generally work it when they're putting the prices on their website?
I think probably what you just said really with prices from. So if you know what the lowest is that you've got set within your minimum pricing, you can still advertise prices from. And that's if you want to have prices on at all. I think it maybe be more common sometimes now for there to be a room description, but you to have to select dates before a price showed. But I know in some cases with things like glamping, it is normal to have pricing on. So I would say the pricing from makes the most sense.
Yeah. We've got another question. Is there an offer to sign up to RoomPriceGenie, and is there an additional cost for RoomPriceGenie, or is it part of the ResNexus package? So I think, yeah, we need to work out what the costs of everything are, basically.
Yeah, so we are running a promotion at the moment, which is 50% off the first 3 months of RoomPriceGenie. RoomPriceGenie is a different system to ResNexus, so it would be a separate subscription. All of our subscriptions are based on the number of units that you've got. So we would go through that in a call if you were interested in learning a bit more. We would be upfront with the pricing straight away, but it does just depend on the number of units you have for sale. And we are obviously then offering that 50% off for the first 3 months. And the trial period and setup period is completely free of charge. So you can kind of see it in action before making that decision whether you're going to, whether you're happy with the level of return on investment you think you'd get from using it.
Yeah, there's no initial integration cost to do the trial, and there's no obligation after the trial to subscribe. It's we want you to test the system, and then hopefully you're seeing the benefits. You're starting to slowly see results and save time, and that's when you would subscribe with RoomPriceGenie. We do rolling monthly subscriptions with no tie-in period. We do yearly subscriptions, which offer a further saving. But yeah, all of that is something you could decide as after you've completed the trial. Yeah.
And what I will check for you, Karen, is whether there is an additional monthly cost for the integration with ResNexus, for whatever you're paying for ResNexus, whether there's any additional cost, because I'm not sure of that answer. So I'll find that out for you and email it to you. I think that is all the questions I have. So I think the best way is, if you're interested in trying RoomPriceGenie, if you want to email me vjones@resnexus.uk. It's not .co.uk, just .uk. So vjones@resnexus.uk. Then just email me and let me know, and then I'll get in touch with Lauren and Ben, and then they can start setting up and set you up for your free trial. I think that's probably the easiest way, isn't it, of getting started. Because yeah, I know it's quite a big, like, it's a big thing in my head if I was going to start changing all my prices. So yeah, it would be great for people to have like a one-to-one conversation with you and go through prices and everything. So
yeah, and obviously with a demo as well. If someone just wants to sort that one-to-one conversation and more of a similar to what I've just showed, but more of a personalized sort of demo, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking your time to talk to us all about RoomPriceGenie, and thank you for attending this webinar. And yes, I hope you have a lovely rest of your summer, and that summer is going well, and we will see you again next month on our next webinar. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye bye.